Tomorrow night, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final will arrive. We got some numbers here we need to talk about. So it was the Avs winning in overtime, right? Knocking off the Lightning on their home ice in the Mile High. So look at this. When the home team wins Game 1, that would be the Avs in this situation, they win the series 74.7% of the time. That's great. Okay, but if the away team wins Game 2 to even the series, like if the Lightning win tomorrow night, they win the series close to 50% of the time. But if the home team wins Game 2 to go up 2-0 in the series, they win the series close to 90% of the time. So right here, even if the Lightning win tomorrow night, it's kind of like split, right? There's still an opportunity for the Avs to come away with this based off the numbers. And as everybody knows, numbers don't lie, and neither do these guys. DraftKings Contributor Geoff Ulrich, got RotoWire's Bruno here. We got NHL.com's Fantasy Guru Pete Jensen. Hell of a panel for this morning. So let's go ahead and let's talk some showdown plays here, guys, for tomorrow night. Who are you going to captain? Like, are you going to save some money with Landeskog maybe for a repeat performance in Game 1, or do we want to pay up here for McKinnon or possibly someone in the crease? Paul?
I'm leaning on the numbers that you led off the segment with, Emerson. I'm looking for Tampa to make this a series. If they lose tomorrow night, you're right. It's a 90. I think it's a 90% chance Colorado's going to win this set, and that's a turn for me so that I don't want to see. I want to see this be a long, competitive series. And we, on the panel the other day on Game 1, we were all on Kucherov. He, other than one great play, was not quite as noticeable as he has been for much of these playoffs. I expect that to change. I expect Tampa to have a much better effort. They only lost by an overtime goal, and I didn't think they played very well at all. So the upside for them is huge, and I think Kucherov's going to be a big part of that.
Pete, McKinnon's going to cost you the most. He's 16-2. You brave enough stuffing that large salary in your lineup?
I'm definitely getting him into my mock lineup because of his shot volume alone, regardless of even if the Lightning bounce back. But as far as captain, I'm going with the hot hand here, Andre Palat for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think many people in the grand scheme of things realize how productive this guy has been among the NHL's elite this postseason. He's got goals in 6 of his past 8 games. He's second in even strength goals this postseason behind Evander Kane, who's no longer playing in the playoffs because the Oilers got bounced. And then Palat is third in even strength points behind only McDavid and Draisaitl. So that's really high praise. I know those guys are eliminated too, but Palat is doing this all at even strength. It's been incredible how consistent he's been lately. So I'm banking on him for a big performance, and he brings that exposure to Kucherov as always.
Geoff, who are you banking on for a big performance? One big enough to pay up 1.5 times the salary for it, captain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go against these guys and
Nice.
suggest that, I think that the Avalanche probably had a lot of pressure on them in Game 1. They were nervous. They were a little bit rusty, and they still won the game after blowing a 2-goal lead. I think you see perhaps a multiple goal win by the Avalanche. And I like going back to their first line. I think that going with the value with Valeri Nichushkin is smart. I mean, like, this guy, it's a coming out party for him these playoffs. What a great all-around player. What a great pickup he's been for Colorado. Just a really good depth player, now just slotted in alongside Nathan McKinnon. That first line for Colorado was all over Tampa Bay in Game 1. I don't see a reason why it won't be the same. Nichushkin, 6 shots on net and a couple points in Game 1. I think at 10-2, you can roster him. And I think the other contrarian move to go with Colorado is perhaps look at Darcy Kuemper. Again, didn't have the greatest Game 1, but he snuck through with the win. The rust is a little bit off now. The pressure's a little bit off because they've taken that Game 1. Don't be shocked if Kuemper, gets on a streak here, because he's a little bit of an underrated goalie. Everyone likes to talk about the advantage that Tampa has in net. He has gone through really hot stretches, so I don't mind being contrarian. Again, we're talking about a big field tournament here. I think going a little bit contrarian with Kuemper makes sense.
Is there an obvious stack with your captain, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're playing Nichushkin, I mean, like Nathan McKinnon in the flex is just obviously a must. I mean, 5 shots on Game 1, he was getting his shot through as well. And aggressive force, he's really turned into the two-way guy, and they took it to the Tampa top 6 as well. So I think obviously pairing him with McKinnon, the whole reason why you take the value with a guy like Nichushkin in the captain would be to get McKinnon and other studs in your lineup. So McKinnon would be the obvious one. Obviously, you could play the entire line stack too, but I definitely like spending up for the Colorado forwards. the way they used their defense in game one, it was more to shut down, especially that first defensive pairing with Cale Makar and Devin Taves. So I think definitely paying up for the Colorado forwards is where you should go. And obviously, if you're putting Nichushkin in the captains, you're putting McKinnon in the flex with him.
All right, Paul, hook me up, dude. Someone you're stacking with your captain.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that Pete mentioned Palat on this episode. I waxed poetic on him on the last one, quoting much the same stats, Pete. So I'm on side with that pick, and he'll be definitely part of my team. But I'm also going to include Victor Hedman. When they've needed this guy to come up big offensively, he has in prior series. I expect a tour de force effort from him in game 2 to lead this team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least 2 points in that game. He's done it before in other rounds in this playoff when they needed it most. The big defenseman has come through as a big part of the offense. I expect that in a big way in game 2. And Palat riding shotgun with the big boys, never a bad play in these playoffs. I think he's got to be in there. So that's 3 Tampa guys for sure, and maybe a 4th if I get Stamkos in there as well.
Pete, with your captain, who would make it a perfect pair?
I got a couple other Lightning guys to stack because I feel pretty confident about them bouncing back given their track record. I got Vasilevsky, I got Kucherov, and I got Ross Colton, who came very close to scoring in game 1. He seems due for a goal, in my opinion. So those are the other guys that I have from Tampa Bay in my mock lineup. Vasilevsky's been a little shaky on the road this postseason with a 909, 5-5. But again, following a loss, nearly unbeatable, just that one blip on the radar against the Rangers. And then, of course, they went on to win 4 straight. So I love the resiliency of Vasilevsky. I'd sneak him in. Past couple of showdown series, I've been fading the goaltenders, but give me Vasi in a bounce-back spot stacked with Palat and Kucherov, and we'll call it a day.
All right, but Pete, some big names that were held to some small fantasy numbers in game 1. Is there anyone you actually want to stay away from in game 2? Someone you're considering fading, huh?
It's hard to make a case to fade any of these guys. I'm not fading McKinnon or Makar. I will fade for now Braden Point just because he's on the 3rd line, but that could change at any time.
Yeah.
Again, it's a tough assignment to fade any of these guys because it could be an offensive-minded series. I love the response from Tampa Bay, by the way, when they fell behind in game 1. I felt like once they tied that game, all the pressure was on Colorado. That's something I expect to carry over to game 2. But yeah, to answer your question, Braden Point no longer playing, not even in the top 6, but we're accustomed to seeing him as the top line center from recent postseasons. So for now, as he gets the juices flowing again, he gets back up to game speed. I know he had an assist in game 1, but I will fade Braden Point here.
Jeff, would you consider fading like Darcy Kuemper here? I know he's the winning goalie, but if you look and dive into his numbers a little more, and I talked about it with Paul the other day, it actually was not a very strong performance by him.
No, I mentioned it. There was clear rust. He only saw 23 shots against, obviously, and 11-3. But I do think you have to give Kuemper credit for hanging in there too. Tampa Bay tied the game. They were starting to ramp up the pressure and stuff like that, and he did hang in. I think that, again, everyone's going to be looking to Vasilevsky here. I really do think for the bounce back. I think that you've got to think about this from a strategy standpoint. Kuemper has, yes, he's not as good a goalie as Vasilevsky. I think we all know that, but he's certainly capable of showing up with a big game here. And if Tampa does bring a few more shots on net, I think that the upside with Kuemper is actually going to be better in game 2. So I really don't mind fading Vasilevsky here because, again, everyone's kind of going to be playing for the Tampa bounce back, but Colorado is still the favorite at home. I think the pressure is a little bit off Colorado in this spot because they came through when they needed to in overtime, and Kuemper could easily be the goalie who ends up with a shutout or allows 1 goal. So I think Kuemper is actually a very strong contrarian play tonight. That's where I would go. I don't think there'll be very much ownership on him at all. It's obviously a highly volatile play, but I think paying up for him actually makes a lot of sense tonight with your lineups.
Paul, who is someone that you are definitely not going to roster tomorrow night in game 2?
I'm going to fade Colorado's offensive defensemen, both Makar and Taves, and I'll tell you why. The Tampa strategy throughout these playoffs when they've needed victories is to use the cliche that you hear every intermission when they talk to these players. You got to get the pucks in deep. Well, just keep an eye on how many times they dump the puck over Makar and Taves into their corners and make them go 200 feet. they're going to get tired of doing that when the pressure's on, and Tampa's got to turn it up that way. And I think that's going to be a key part of their bounce back in this effort. And I also would fade Colorado's goaltending because I think they're in for a rough night. Tampa's going to play their game, and they're going to find their way back into this set. Guys,
Last one here, quickly. You don't get fantasy points for it, but who's winning tomorrow night, Pete?
I got Tampa Bay. I also wanted to just comment on what Paul was saying. If you're going to fade those top two guys on the blue line for Colorado, I wanted to give a shout out to Bowen Byram, what he's done for Colorado. It's a good value pick for DFS. He's top 5 in puck possession among all players as a rookie defenseman this postseason. Again, I think it's going to be close. I have Avs in 7, but in order for it to get to 7, Tampa's going to respond, I think, a couple of different times and knock the Avalanche onto their rear end and provide some adversity that they haven't really faced so far this postseason, except for the Blues series.
All right, so you got your pick? Winning. Who's winning?
Tampa.
That's what I like.
For sure.
I think he implied Tampa pretty strongly there.
No,
I
just need to hear it. Jeffrey, go ahead. Who's winning?
Colorado. I'm going to stick with my Colorado in 5. They're going to win 2. Tampa will get 1 at home, but Colorado's winning tonight.
Paul, talk to me, Goose.
Jeff is still thinking about the Edmonton sweep, and he's giving Colorado too much credit. I think Tampa's going to bounce back, and they're going to wrest control of this series going home.